The truth about failure no one tells you. Asterisk asterisk. Let me tell you the truth about failure, not the Instagram quote version, not the everything happens for a reason lie, but the real, uncomfortable, life-altering truth. Failure doesn't feel inspirational. It feels embarrassing. It feels lonely. It feels like you're behind while everyone else is winning. And that's exactly why most people avoid it. Here's the first truth no one tells you. Failure is not the opposite of success, it's the cost of admission. You don't accidentally succeed, you don't luck your way into mastery. Every meaningful win is built on a mountain of mistakes that nobody claps for. If you're failing, congratulations, you're doing something that actually matters. Now here's the second truth. Failure doesn't mean you're not good enough. It means you're not ready yet, and yet is powerful. Failure is feedback. It's a diagnostic report on who you are today, your habits, your discipline, your emotional control, your skills. It doesn't judge your future, it exposes your gaps, but most people don't read the report. They take failure personally instead of professionally, which brings me to the third truth, and this one stings. People don't quit because they can't win. They quit because failure attacks their identity. They stop because they don't want to feel stupid. They stop because they don't want to look weak. They stop because their ego would rather protect comfort than earn greatness. Let me be clear, if your self-worth is tied to winning, failure will destroy you. But if your self-worth is tied to growth, failure becomes fuel. And finally, the truth that changes everything. Consistency through failure is the real superpower. Not motivation, not talent, not intelligence, the ability to show up after you lose, the ability to keep working when nobody believes in you, the ability to stay disciplined when the results are silent. That's what separates the people who talk about success from the people who live it. So if you're failing right now, good. Stay there long enough to learn, get hit, adjust, get better, repeat, because failure isn't trying to stop you. It's trying to build you into someone strong enough to win. And the moment you stop running from it is the moment everything changes. Failure is not the opposite of success, it's the price of entry. That's the part no one prepares you for. We're taught to chase winning, celebrate outcomes, and avoid mistakes like they're proof of incompetence. But the truth is, failure shows up the moment you decide to play a real game. The moment you aim higher than what's comfortable, the moment you stop doing what you already know how to do, you step directly into failure. And that's not a flaw in the system, that is the system. If you're not failing, you're not playing a big enough game. You're staying inside the boundaries of what's familiar, where your skills already work and your identity feels safe. Failure only exists at the edge of growth. It lives where your current abilities run out. That's why beginners fail more than experts, and why experts still fail when they push into new territory. The absence of failure doesn't mean you're winning, it usually means you're hiding. What makes failure so painful isn't the loss itself, it's what it threatens. It challenges how you see yourself. It whispers that you might not be as capable as you thought, that other people might notice, that the effort could be wasted. That emotional hit convinces people to retreat. They downgrade their goals, not because the goal was wrong, but because failure felt like a verdict instead of information. But failure isn't a verdict. It's a receipt. It proves you showed up. It proves you attempted something that required more from you than you currently had. Every failed attempt is evidence of participation in a higher level game. Success doesn't hand out receipts, failure does. The people who achieve extraordinary results aren't immune to failure. They are fluent in it. They don't romanticize it, but they don't fear it either. They study it, they extract lessons, they adjust, they understand that the pain is temporary, but the data is permanent. Each failure sharpens decision making, builds resilience, and strips away illusions. When you start seeing failure as the cost you pay to become someone stronger, smarter, and more capable, it loses its power to stop you. It still hurts, but it no longer defines you. It becomes part of the process, part of the climb, part of what it takes to move from who you are now toward who you're trying to become while everyone else is standing still, mistaking comfort for safety, mistaking the absence of failure for progress, mistaking small games for peace. Failure doesn't expose your lack of potential. It exposes the gap between who you are right now and who you need to become. That distinction matters more than most people realize. When something doesn't work, the mind jumps to conclusions. Maybe I'm not talented, maybe I'm not cut out for this, maybe this just isn't for me. But failure is never asking you to quit. It's asking you to upgrade. It's pointing directly at the skills you haven't built yet, the habits you haven't mastered, the discipline you haven't earned. Potential is invisible. It exists in what you could become, not in what you can do today. Failure simply highlights the distance between the two. Most people misread that signal. They treat failure like a character flaw instead of a skill deficiency. But skills can be learned, systems can be improved, mindsets can be trained. Failure is specific if you're willing to look closely. It tells you where your preparation was weak, where your focus slipped, where your emotional control broke down. It shows you what worked and what didn't, without emotion, without judgment. The problem is that reading failure honestly requires humility, and humility is uncomfortable. When you detach failure from your identity, something powerful happens. You stop defending yourself and start developing yourself. You stop explaining why it didn't work and start asking how to make it work next time. Every attempt becomes a test instead of a trial. Every loss becomes a lesson instead of a label. That shift turns frustration into curiosity and disappointment into direction. The people who grow the fastest aren't the most gifted, they're the most honest. Honest about what they don't know, honest about where they're weak, honest about the work they're avoiding. Failure forces that honesty, whether you want it or not. You can either let it crush you or let it coach you. One choice keeps you the same. The other slowly reshapes your identity through deliberate improvement, repetition, and patience. Even when progress feels invisible and confidence hasn't caught up yet, most people don't quit because the goal is impossible. They quit because failure threatens how they see themselves. It's not the missed result that breaks them. It's the story they tell about it. The moment failure feels like proof that they're not smart enough, not talented enough, or not built for this, the pain shifts from practical to personal. And once failure attacks identity, quitting feels like self-protection. Ego is subtle like that. It convinces you that stopping is wisdom, that walking away is maturity, that lowering the bar is realism. But most of the time, it's just fear wearing a convincing mask. Fear of being judged, fear of looking foolish, fear of trying again and confirming the doubt that already exists in your head. Ego doesn't want progress, it wants comfort. It wants to preserve the version of you that hasn't been tested too hard. The irony is that growth requires temporary damage to your ego. You have to be willing to look bad before you look competent. You have to accept being a beginner, being slow, being wrong. That discomfort is the toll you pay to evolve. People who refuse to pay it stay trapped in the same patterns, repeating what they're already good at and calling it potential. When failure stops being about who you are and starts being about what you're learning, persistence becomes possible. You no longer need to win to feel worthy. You just need to improve. That shift makes you harder to break because the outcome no longer controls your self-respect. You can lose without collapsing. You can struggle without spiraling. You can keep moving without external validation. The people who last aren't the ones with the strongest confidence. They're the ones with the most flexible identity. They're willing to let the old version of themselves fail, so a stronger version can take its place through repetition, reflection, and resilience built quietly over time. Consistency through failure is the real advantage, because it's the one thing most people refuse to practice. Anyone can work hard when things are going well. Anyone can show up when results are immediate and praise is guaranteed. The real separation happens when effort continues without reward, when progress slows, when losses stack up, when doubt gets loud and motivation disappears. That's where most people stop, not because they have to, but because they don't know how to operate without emotional reinforcement. Consistency during failure rewires how you see effort. You stop asking whether it feels good and start asking whether it moves you forward. You stop negotiating with your emotions and start honoring your commitments. That discipline compounds quietly. Every day you show up despite frustration. You're training reliability into your character. Not talent, not inspiration, but dependability. Failure tests consistency because it removes the illusion of momentum. It forces you to work without applause, without certainty, without visible progress. That's uncomfortable, but it's also where resilience is built. Each time you act in alignment with your goals instead of your feelings, you gain control over your behavior. Over time, that control becomes confidence, not the loud kind, but the steady kind that doesn't collapse under pressure. Most people wait to feel ready before they act. Consistent people act until they're ready. They understand that emotions follow action, not the other way around. They trust the process even when they don't trust the moment. That trust isn't blind optimism. It's experience earned by surviving previous failures and realizing they didn't end the story. When you stay consistent through setbacks, you quietly separate yourself from the crowd. Not because you're better, but because you're still there, still learning, still adjusting, still building when others decided it wasn't worth the discomfort, repeating the same small loops, never realizing how close they were to becoming someone different if they had just stayed long enough. Failure also strips away illusions faster than success ever will. When things are going well, it's easy to confuse momentum with mastery and luck with skill. Success can hide weaknesses for a long time, letting bad habits survive under good results. Failure doesn't allow that. It exposes shortcuts, laziness, and assumptions you didn't even know you were making. It forces you to confront reality as it is, not as you hoped it would be. That confrontation is uncomfortable, but it's also clarifying. You stop guessing and start seeing. You stop blaming circumstances and start examining decisions. In that sense, failure is brutally honest, and honesty is a rare advantage in a world full of noise, excuses, and self-deception. Failure also teaches patience in a way nothing else can. Big goals don't bend to urgency or desire. They move at their own pace, and failure reminds you of that over and over again. You learn that effort doesn't always equal immediate progress, and that progress doesn't always look like winning. Sometimes it looks like surviving another attempt without quitting. Sometimes it looks like making a slightly better decision than last time. That patience reshapes your expectations. You stop demanding instant proof and start committing to long-term growth. You begin to respect time as a tool instead of an obstacle. Another truth hidden inside failure is that it builds emotional strength, not just technical skill. Rejection, loss, and embarrassment train your nervous system to stay calm under pressure. Each failure you survive makes the next one less threatening. Over time, you stop reacting and start responding. You gain the ability to think clearly when things go wrong instead of panicking or shutting down. That emotional control becomes a competitive edge, especially when others fall apart the moment outcomes don't go their way. Calm is earned, and failure is one of its harshest teachers. Failure also forces you to decide how serious you really are. Wanting success is easy. Enduring repeated failure is where desire gets tested. At some point, excuses run out and motivation fades, leaving only commitment. That moment reveals whether the goal is a wish or a priority. The people who keep going aren't always the most passionate, they're the most resolved. They've decided that discomfort is acceptable, that progress can be slow, and that quitting costs more than continuing, even when the path feels uncertain and the results refuse to show up on schedule.